Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. How are you doing today? Michael Zuber with One Rental at a Time, and it is Thursday, and that means we have my good friend Jonathan Twomley here. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Michael. How are you today?
I'm doing really, really well. Hey, one thing I knew I wanted to talk to you about this week is I don't know if you've seen it, but something hit my Twitter feed of all things first, and then it started hitting my news feeds. And that is there was a tweet saying BlackRock's coming out and outbidding mom and dad for homes, and they're destroying the single family market. Oh, woe is me. We got to go get them. Did you see that tweet or did you see that kind of talk track this week?
I've seen the conversation. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know about this event.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting. I actually dug into it. It was actually based on an article, at least was pulled. Some of the stats were pulled from a Wall Street Journal article that I actually referenced in my daily financial news way back in April. So it's kind of misguided. But what I want to talk about here is not why that feeling is wrong, but I want to talk about the fact that, you know what, Wall Street is in the single family market. They're bigger than ever before. And frankly, they will be bigger going forward. I mean, I don't know if you saw it, but Blackstone just this week spent $6 billion buying a company called Home Partners of America. And in that acquisition, they got 17,000 homes. So the average purchase price, I just had to do it, it's about 340 grand. So again, Wall Street's here. I think the notion that they're competing with mom and pop, at least most of the time, is out of, bless you, out of bounds. But single family is a great asset, and Wall Street's proven that they could make it profitable.
Yeah, well, let's see. So what do we take on first here? I think maybe we take on the panic
Yes.
to this, right? So now this has been going on for quite a while. It's just only in the news now.
Yeah.
I've been hearing for several years. I have a friend, we used to serve on a board together, who originates mortgages for a very large mortgage originator here in New York City. They're only institutional clients. And he's been saying for 4 or 5 years now that the biggest chunk of his business now is originating mortgages for private equity buying single family homes.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
He's been doing like more than $1 billion of loans a year.
Wow.
For several years now in single family homes. So now that sounds like a lot. And I think, single family home investors who are concerned about how this impacts them, certainly when you hear numbers like that, you think, oh my goodness, how can I ever compete?
Yeah, how can I compete, right?
Yeah. What's going to happen to pricing? Mm-hmm. But here's the thing that I think people need to keep in mind to kind of keep this in perspective. So you hear that, BlackRock is investing, $6 billion in single family homes and all this other kind of stuff. It's like the single family home market is like a $1 trillion market, right?
Actually, I looked that up. We talked about this last week. Just the rental side, so not even all owner occupied. It's actually a $1 trillion market.
That's what I just said, $1 trillion market.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard billion. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah. So it is a $1 trillion market. $6 billion is a drop in the bucket.
Exactly.
Right. It is just not enough to move the needle.
No.
It may move the needle a little bit in places where they buy.
Exactly.
But here's the other thing. When you and this is, this probably is something that maybe multifamily investors are more familiar with than single family investors. But, multifamily investors, when you first get into the business, you're like, oh, I'm going to go and talk to family offices, and I'm going to go talk to these really high net worth people because they have lots of money, and I only need $1 million that can just write a check and not even think about it, right?
Yeah.
The problem that you then run into is if you can get meetings with these folks at all, what you often will hear is, wow, your deal looks really great. I wish you needed $10 million because I can't get out of bed to write you $1 million check. It's just not worth my time. I still have to do all the due diligence. I still have to do all of the transactional work. We have all of our costs associated with this. There's the time. It is just not efficient for us to write you a check for $1 million, no matter how good the deal is. I actually had a meeting with Michael Dell's family office one time through a connection. They were super nice. I couldn't believe they even met with me. They just did it as a favor to the person who introduced us. And I met with the the COO of Michael Dell's family office, and he said to me, Jonathan, the problem is that if it's less than $100 million, it just doesn't move the needle for us.
Wow.
You could be returning like 2,000% a year on on $1 million of equity, and it just wouldn't make enough of a difference. We'd rather get 5% on $100 million, right? Because it just
Yeah.
that'll move the needle for us.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is, what, there are some investors where bigger is better.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so the point here is that, what's going to happen is that BlackRock is going to be going and buying portfolios. They're not
Exactly.
going to be coming in and bidding against you on the one house that you're trying to buy. Right.
Mhm.
And when they're bidding on portfolios, also, they want to get some kind of discount over that market price, right?
Mhm.
Because
Of
they're
course.
buying so many. So they may not actually even be driving up the market at all,
Mhm.
right? Because they're if they're going to buy 1,000 houses at a stretch, and they know they don't have the time to due diligence all those houses. The way that
No,
it works for them is that they're going to negotiate a bulk price. They're going to then due diligence them after they buy them and sell off the ones that they don't want.
exactly.
And so that's the only way to make this business work. You can't do due diligence on 1,000 separate homes. The only thing that they're going to do due diligence on probably is title, to make
Oh, for
sure that they
sure.
actually have titles to all of them,
Yeah.
right? And
No doubt.
that's all they can do with that size portfolio. So they're not coming in and bidding. You're not going to be like, putting in a bid on a property, and then some guy from BlackRock is going to be bidding 25% more,
Yeah.
or whatever. That's just not going to happen. So I really think this is something that you shouldn't worry about. But on the other hand, as you said, I think it validates the single family home rental market
Yeah.
as a good investment. And there was actually an article that showed up on Seeking Alpha, which unfortunately now has become a pay site.
Yes, I saw that.
And
Yeah.
I haven't gotten around to subscribing to it yet, because I like yet another subscription for
Yeah.
something to, right. So, but the headline was, is single family rentals a threat to multifamily? And maybe it wasn't Seeking Alpha, it was something else, but it was also paywalled. Whatever it was like, gee, thanks for sending me this link, because now
Yeah.
it's like behind
Thanks. I
paywall.
read 3 sentences. I can't read anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was on some list of like, today's must read for multifamily today, the
Yeah.
top 10 and then they're all behind, like all of them are behind a subscription. It's like, okay,
What the hell?
So, but anyway, I don't think single family is a threat to multifamily. I think the market is very, very, different people want different things. Single family homes are more expensive than apartments, generally speaking. So you're
Yeah.
looking at a different market. But anyway, the point is, I would see this as nothing other than a good thing.
Yeah.
For single family investors.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things I take from this. First off, again, negative headlines or any attack headlines is what gets clicks. So hence the Twitter. I mean, it was funny. The Twitter thing I saw, which is very rare. I don't usually get my news from Twitter, but this is where it started. Went to the Wall Street Journal article. I'm like, dude, I talked about this in April. Why is this coming up in June? It's crazy.
Yeah.
And really, for me, it's what I'll say is, like you said, single family homes have proved to be a great investment. It is now becoming a real business inside hedge funds or big money, like BlackRock, like Blackstone, right? The biggest of the big. Underneath that, there are Wall Street firms who have targeted markets. One thing that you need to realize is I had a conversation with some folks in Memphis, Tennessee, for example, after I had this discussion. And they're like, we don't know who it is, but there's one buyer who has been a part of something like 40% of the transactions below a certain price point. And I'm like, they're clearly trying to hide their name or who they are with underneath entities, but it's very clear that somebody with huge deep pockets is buying. So what I would tell you, if you're in a market like that, which, Memphis and Tennessee, right? No taxes. There's lots of reasons for people moving there. You need to figure out what their buy box is, because not only are they going to be buying portfolios, like you talked about earlier, and getting a discount and then only looking at title, they're going to have a buy box, and they're going to be so picky on the buy box. If something comes across the buy box and it's a yes, they buy it, right? But if it goes around it, it's not going to be there. The other thing we found by digging into Memphis a little bit is they only close about 33% of the deals they lock up. Right. So again, their buy box, something doesn't fit and they back out. So again, what I'm telling individual investors is follow up, do the follow up. During the crash, right, 2010, 11, once Wall Street got in and they started buying entire blocks of REOs, I got every deal after that with follow up. Right. Before I was just getting it because I was the only bidder. Right. For 2 years, it was wonderful. And then Wall Street shows up, can't get anything. And then I get deals by follow up. So again, there are ways you can compete with them. They have deep pockets, but they won't work as hard as you, right? If you have a market, if you have a network, if you have this, you can absolutely be David to their Goliath. I suggest not going head to head. That's probably a bad idea, but you can bid around them.
Yeah, and the thing is, unless they have somebody sort of specifically working on your market or your sub-market, they can't possibly know the market as well as you can, right? And in addition, like I said, their model is going to be buy in bulk because that's efficient.
Yes.
And then because they can't always break up the portfolios, but in order to get the stuff that they want, they have to buy stuff that they don't want, right? So that's another thing you can try to figure out is, like you said, what is their box? And there might be a bunch of stuff inside that portfolio that doesn't fit the box, and they're going to want to get rid of it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't think, again, sitting here as somebody who's clearly already in the market, I realize this might be biased, but I see them as a good thing. It validates the market. I do see, frankly, lots more competition for below the median. That's just where they're going to play, right? They're not going to go buy Boardwalk and Park Place, to use a monopoly analogy, right? They want to be somewhere else on that board. And that's where I am. So again, if they're in your market, compete smartly. I do think prices will go up. I think we're going to have more rental homes, single family homes in the next 5 to 10 years than we do today. And I think prices are going to go up with it. So again, do the work now, get your single family home, get your 4, as I talk about, go get 4 and see what happens. Any closing thoughts on this one?
Well, I was going to say, I think that, this is going to be the kind of thing that's going to make it slightly tougher for people who want to live in a home.
Yes, for sure.
Right. So just the prices continuing to go up with institutional players coming in. If you're an investor, you have a different perspective on it. If you're looking at it, you have some discipline around it too, right? Because you're going to be sort of hedged in by what the cash flow is on the property, and you really can't go into negative cash flow, right? But if you are a home buyer and where the mentality is different, where you're like, you fall in love with a house and you want to live there, and you're not thinking about it in terms of the cash that it produces, so you don't have that discipline, right? This is going to kind of hurt because it's going to drive prices up. So it's going to mean that those people have to pay more. And you have the option as an investor of saying yes or no. You can always just say no, right?
Yeah.
So, but the home buyer needs to say yes, and they are going to have to overpay. So, kind of too bad for them, unfortunately, in those markets that are hot.
Yeah, when Wall Street shows up, they will be impactful. Right.
One more point on this, though, that I would like to make is, and this is something that I'm doing myself with multifamily too.
Okay.
Avoiding the hot markets, right? Just stay away from them, right? I think there's an idea that, you can only make money in markets where, everybody is moving to. Well, sure, like it's sort of, if everybody's moving there, it's a lot more forgiving. You can make a lot more mistakes and the market will probably bail you out. However, that attracts everybody and it drives up prices and it makes it more likely you'll overpay for something. There are a lot of markets around the country, the Northeast, the Midwest, even parts of, like somebody put something in my Facebook group about Georgia yesterday, and like celebrating the fact that, hey, Atlanta's not the only city that's growing in Georgia, right? Frankly, because Georgia, not spectacular growth in Atlanta, not so much everywhere else, right? And there are a lot of states like that, where pretty much every state, and we'll see what kind of the shakeout from COVID ultimately is. I suspect that in the long run, it's going to be more of a blip than anything else. But, you know, most states with spectacular population growth, it's all concentrated in metro areas.
Yeah.
The rural areas are declining or stagnant, right? So you can find markets where that are not being heavily focused on. I'm not saying like go invest in a place where like everybody is leaving, right? You know, where the average age is like 48 and
Yeah.
like because the children all move out and nobody comes back. Like, you know, that place is dying, so don't invest there. But there are lots of places that are stable or that even have a little bit of population growth that just aren't on the radar because they're smaller or because they're no one's noticed them yet, or they're a little bit too far. You know, people don't consider them in the path of progress because they're a little bit too far out, but you know, like eventually the progress is going to get there. There are lots of markets like this, and BlackRock is not in those markets, right? BlackRock
totally
is
agree.
going, the institutional, this is the thing else you have to understand about the institutional investor mindset. One is that we have all this cash we have to deploy.
Correct.
We want it to be easy and efficient. The other is CYA, right?
Yeah.
They have, it's got to be in that box, and that box is going to be like a certain age property in a certain, in specific markets with specific demographic factors. Like they have, so anything outside that box is not going to fit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And a lot of the people who are kind of like following in their coattails, right, or have come up with the same criteria for themselves, because it's not that hard. I mean, it's easy to come up with the criteria.
Yeah.
Right. So think outside the box a little bit. Think about where are things, you know, where are things growing, but they're not growing so fast, right? Where are things, where is it like a little bit sort of a, you know, like a pocket that people aren't paying attention to? Or conversely, like, where is, what is the market that everybody is crapping on right now because of something, right? Oftentimes you can find really good deals there. And the problem is, not the problem, the opportunity is that everyone's crapping on the market for something that has really nothing to do with how profitable the properties are. And I think like for instance, New York is a good example of that. Like everybody's like, oh, New York is so landlord unfriendly and it's blah, blah, blah. I don't never want to invest in New York. There are lots of people making money in New York, I'll tell you, right? Because it's a wealthy state, right? Rents are high and cap rates are better than places in the South because it's not getting the same attention, right?
It's amazing. So, it's amazing.
You know, you got to think outside of like, oh, Texas, everybody wants to invest in Texas, so I'm going to invest in Texas too.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Be a little more creative.
Yeah, I love that idea. Think outside the box, especially because again, everybody, the big boys have a buy box, and the CYAs, you're absolutely right. They got to stay inside the buy box. So think outside.
Yeah, I mean, I said I didn't quite finish the point of that, which was that you know, they have to stay inside the box, because if they buy something inside the box and it doesn't go well, they're like, well, look, I bought it. This is the box, and so it's not my fault, right? If they go and they do something unusual and it doesn't work, then it is their fault, and then they're the one, you know, their bonus gets cut or they get fired, right? So there's this within these institutional buyers, they can't be creative. So that makes an opportunity for you to be creative.
I love that. I love that. Hopefully that hit home. Again, the key, if you're going to in a market with them, is understand their buy box. It's pretty easy. I talked to folks in Memphis. It was 1980 build or newer, 3 or 4 bedrooms, single story, in a couple of locations, right? They weren't all over Memphis. So again, figure out the buy box, think outside the box. And again, go to a tertiary or secondary market, right? Not Atlanta, go somewhere else. So great advice, Jonathan. What is your Facebook group? People need to join that. What's your Facebook group?
Yeah, the Facebook is called Multifamily Investment Community. So please swing by there. Because of a little glitchy thing with Facebook, I have some questions you need to answer to get in, and Facebook doesn't show them to people on phones.
Oh, interesting.
Bizarre.
Crazy.
So log in on your computer the first time and answer the questions, and I'll let you in. And then you can always use your phone after that. But it's a great community. We've got 11,200 or so members. So right now, and love to have you.
Yeah, I'm a part of the group, folks. So join and check it out. Thanks, Jonathan.
Absolutely.